Hi everybody, I'm Ryan. Today we're going to talk about the modern metagame and some really interesting shifts that have happened since I did my last modern metagame 2 weeks ago. Now, as a reminder, if you're new to my metagames, I take this data from top 32s in challenges, 3-1 and 4-0s in prelims, and 5-0s in leagues. So technically this is a winner's metagame, but I think it's really reflective of the decks that you will likely be playing against on Magic Online or at your local tournaments, because these are the lists that people are going to be copying. That being said, let's jump into it. So as we look at the overall metagame over the course of the past week, there's a few things that is not surprising at all. Number one is Red-Black Scam being the top deck so much. Over 20% of the meta is just insane. In second place, Yawgmoth with 8.6% of the meta, and a new face into the scene of the top 3 best decks is Burn. So let's talk about these 3 decks. Red-Black Scam should be familiar to you by now if you've played Modern at all. It is a deck that is trying to scam their opponent out of the game. It's also called Red-White Evoke if you're on Wizards coverage, but we know in our hearts it is scam. Its best hand evokes Grief and then undies Grief, normally with Not Dead After All, where it comes back as a 4/3 menace, and effectively you get to take the 2 best cards out of your opponent's hand and you start your turn 1 with a 4/3 menace creature, and often that's enough. Now, sometimes you do that with Fury, and you just end up with a 4/4 double striker, but you don't get to look at your opponent's hand. Other ways that it scams is with cards like Dothy Voidwalker and Hand Destruction, where it can then cast your most powerful cards, and just playing Regavan, and Regavan just says Death Touch to players, effectively. And the Regavan hand can often allow you to play a turn 2 Blood Moon, or sometimes even a turn 3 Blood Moon can scam you out of the game. The second most popular deck is Yawgmoth. Yawgmoth is a creature deck. It plays a bunch of undying creatures and kind of is just like a green weenie deck. However, it can kind of toolbox this deck with Court of Calling and has some really insane combos with Yawgmoth, inputting -1/-1 counters on creatures that have already undied so that you can sacrifice them again, etc., etc. And that in conjunction with Blood Artist effects means you can kind of win the game on the spot, or you can do it for value and just outcard your opponent. And the deck's gotten so much better with Soul Cauldron. Yawgmoth has skyrocketed to the top 3. And the newest deck on the scene in the top 3 is Burn. Burn is exactly what it sounds like. It plays aggressive creatures such as Goblin Guide, Monastery Swiftspear, sometimes Eidolon of Great Revel, and instants and sorceries that go to face. And they're trying to bring your life total to 0 as fast as possible, and that's all it cares about. Now, the reason this deck is in the top is because it actually has a reasonable matchup against Scam, because most of the cards answer Scam's creatures, and Scam has a lot of hands that if its initial creature flounders, the game's over. The new, hotness in Modern is this Cascade Beanstalk variant. There's a bunch of different variants with it, but essentially people are starting to play Shardless Agent to Cascade into up the Beanstalk and just get a ton of value. And while people are doing that, Burn doesn't care about the bean nonsense. And Burn is just gonna go face and burn the beans. And because of those 2 things, Burn has gotten very popular. Now we look at the overall metagame. However, there are 4 Magic Online challenges that happen every weekend. So this is the top 8 metagame. What decks have risen to the top, knowing the overall metagame? Now, to nobody's surprise, top 8 is representative of about equal to Scam's overall representation at 21.9%. In second place, a different deck in the top is Amulet Titan, and in third place, it is shared between Yawgmoth and Mono Black Coffer. So let's talk about the 2 decks that we haven't talked about yet. Amulet Titan is a deck that effectively is trying to capitalize on the enter the battlefield tap, produce 2 mana lands, and Amulet of Vigor. And I'm not going to explain all the combos. We can do a deck tech at some point later. But these 2 mana lands enter the battlefield tapped, and they bounce something to your hand. They then untap, then you can tap them for 2 mana. If you have multiple Amulet of Vigors, you can stack the triggers as such that 1 land can produce 4 mana. You see where this is going. They play Primeval Titan. They can give Primeval Titan haste because the lands entering the battlefield from Primeval Titan untap because you have an Amulet of Vigor, and it just goes insane from there. There's a bunch of different combos, but that's the basics of the deck. And Mono Black Coffers is a deck that, man, I have a lot of losses too. I'm going to be totally honest with you. It's a deck that capitalizes on Cabal Coffers by playing a bunch of swamps. Is a mono black control deck on the back of Orcish Bowmasters and Shieldred, and then uses that insane amount of mana to cast March of Wretched Sorrow, or cast Karn the Great Creator and then use their sideboard, which is a Karn board, to answer whatever is going on with their opponent. It is just so good at what it does, and I'm surprised more people aren't playing it, to be totally honest. But that is the modern metagame. It's a slight update that red-black scam is still the best deck and most popular deck. But seeing what is being played to challenge that, I think is still kind of interesting, so I'm going to still do these videos. If you like this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. Check me out on social medias. Links are above me and in the description, especially joining the community on Twitter and Discord, but also checking out the Patreon. That link is above me and in the description as well. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.